Hello and welcome to Protect and Prevent podcast. My name is Opal Singleton. I am the president and CEO of an organization called Million Kids, millionkids.org, not .com. That's a rock band. You may or may not like them, but it's millionkids.org, not 1 million, not 8 million, not 5, 10 million, whatever. It's just Million Kids. An organization for the last 15 years has been combating child sex crimes, basically, whether it's sex trafficking or online exploitation. But today I want to talk to you about something that's a lot less definable. And I just want to give you some ideas. I'm not suggesting in any way that I'm the expert or that I have all the answers. But what I want to talk about today is happiness and contentment, and especially happiness and contentment as a choice, both with adults and as also young people. I say that because all of us struggle with it. I think every one of us struggle with it. We don't always do everything right, and there are times other people tick us off, It's going to happen, We're going to see things differently, and it will make your world kind of go upside down. But the reason I really want to talk about this is because I have given a lot of thought to the various cases that we have handled over the last 15 years related to kids who send nudes online and get blackmailed, or someone that is being taken advantage of, or even someone who's being recruited into sex trafficking. And one of the things that I have noticed is, regardless of whether it ends in a situation of exploitation, that there is, I think, an important message for your children. Our team is always looking at these cases and saying, how do we say never again? How do we help a parent say bulletproof their child so they don't get seduced into becoming a victim of trafficking, or maybe a victim of blackmail, although now with deep fakes anybody can be a victim of blackmail. But what I've observed is that there's kind of some traits about the kids that are easily groomed. And I'll take that back a little bit further. I notice when we go out to a nice restaurant and you see families in there eating, and some of the families are just extraordinarily fine. The parents seem to have control. They seem to be able to communicate. Even if the kid messes up, mom gets some sort of look on her face that seems to communicate. Then there's these other families that come in, and their kids are just like hellions. They're on wheels, if you will. I mean, the kids are running around, crying and carrying on. A couple times they lay down on the floor and kick the floor. I'm like, God, I'd just die. Anyway, my mother, I never would have survived that, I guarantee you. But when I look at things, I say to myself, why are some kids more susceptible to being groomed, or to being angry and rebellious than others? The reverse of that conversation is, why do some children have happiness or contentment and others do not? Or maybe have a little bit better judgment and decision-making processes, and others do not. Now, I'm not going to say this is just for children. I've seen a lot of adults that have poor decision-making processes, and I'm sure I've been one of them from various times. But one of the things that I learned in my life, and I just kind of want to share with you, is that happiness is a decision you make. I sometimes talk about a man who was very instrumental in my life. His name was Dr. Gary Jorgensen. I lived up in Utah at the time. My husband had been transferred there. And I wasn't very happy at the time. I didn't want to be taken from my everything I knew here in California. But it is where my life led me, and I needed to learn to deal with it. And I remember Dr. Jorgensen telling me that happiness was my responsibility. My own contentment was my responsibility. Now, I found that offensive. I don't know about you, but it's like, why do you think I got married? It's his problem. And, but it is not. And it's an interesting discussion to have. It's an interesting perspective to say to yourself. One of the other things that I learned along the way that goes along with that, and it was from a guy who wrote a book named Dr. Dwayne Dyer, and one of the things he said is that your self talk, what you say to yourself all day long, determines who you are. And eventually, I put those two concepts together. That what I say to myself all day long decides how I think of myself. And if I say to myself, I'm going to be responsible for my happiness, and today I am going to choose to be happy, and nobody else is responsible for that than me. The same way with contentment. I've gone through some things in my life that have been very, very difficult, and I had to make a choice. 9 years ago, I lost my first husband. I'm very, very blessed today to be remarried and have a wonderful husband. And he also had lost his wife. And so, but one of the things I learned out of that is the choices I make for my own happiness are my responsibility. And there are times in your life where you just don't have much to be happy at, it seems like. But one of the things that I have learned over the years is that part of that happiness comes from gratitude. And I think this is really, really important. Now, I come from a generation that, for instance, early on in my childhood, we didn't have all that much. But whatever I had, my mother saw to it that I took care of it or I didn't get any more. And I say that because today I have much. And I every now and then go, you need to go hang that up. Your mother, remember your mother? She's been gone 40 years, but I remember my mother telling me, you're not getting anything else if you don't take care of what I already got you. And one of the things that I have learned is that when I'm down or I'm feeling unsure of myself, I can be grateful for what I have. Almost everybody in the US has something they can be grateful for. Certainly, there are a lot of people who don't have a lot. And it is up to anybody who has a lot to give back to those that don't. And I believe that's biblical. I'm not making that up myself. But it's an interesting thing. So many times I'll go into and see a teenager's bedroom or sometimes some young adults, and there's crap everywhere throughout that room. And I think to myself, what an interesting exercise it would be to sit down with someone that in that situation and say, when did you buy this outfit? Do you remember what it cost? Did you pay for it yourself? Did somebody give that to you? Is it worth hanging up to you so that it will last a while? And if you don't really want it, then let's give it to someone who could use it. But it has to be made up nice, not wadded up in a pile, because you wouldn't give a gift to somebody wadded up in a pile. And I say that because I think it's really important for uh, every one of us to take some quiet moments, not wag your finger, not lecture, not yell at the top of your voice, but sit down on a regular basis. The other reason I think this is so important is all of our kids are spending most of their childhood on a screen, getting input from people we never met. And they're constantly being babysat or getting input from people we don't know. We don't know what their values are and what their messaging is. And some of it's good and some of it's not so good. It is the way this generation will take on information. But I also think that they are willing to sit down with someone they value, like a parent or a grandparent, and have some conversations like, happiness is a decision you make. So, I see you're kind of down today, but let's talk about some of the good things in your life that you can be that you can have gratitude for so that you can feel good. I mean, you have a mother or a dad, maybe you have a home or an apartment. You might have fine toys. Name them. What do you like about those toys? As children get a little bit older, I think it's important for them to sit down and define what they believe in. And I say that because you're having a lot of people around the world now give input to kids, and they're spending all day long getting in stuff without being able to have the time to sit down and define who they are and verbalize that and share that. Maybe write out, what are your values? What do you stand for? If somebody asks you, especially if they're 8, 9, 10 years old, they're starting to go towards adulthood, who are you? What do you stand for? What do you think is right? And what do you think is wrong? Do you have some goals? Maybe define your goals, like get a B in chemistry. Good grief. That would have been a goal for me, trust me. I think I did finally get it. And I was going to put it in my obituary someday because I thought I'd never get another one. But what are your goals? Not necessarily what you want to be. Most kids really don't know, but if they do know, then let's say they want to be a nurse. Okay, what are you going to do to prepare yourself for that? Are you going to stay physically fit? Are you going to set that as a goal? Are you going to learn to good nutrition and eating right? Are you going to decide that you are going to be happy and that you're going to be worth something? All of this is important because in the conversation, and where I'm headed with this, is that we also need to look at our digital reputation online. What you post online will define who you are. And you may only be 11 or 12 or 13, but that is your digital reputation that will be there forever. Start to look at things that you want to do better. What makes your child happy? Are they happy when they're doing good for other people? Are they happy when they're doing good for themselves? Do they have gratitude for what they have? Or are they constantly ticked off because somebody has more? And begin to talk about being grateful for where you're at. And that will help you be happy. The other thing that's important, I think, to understand is, who do you look to for approval? I mean, we all want approval. You pat me on the head, I'll follow you home. I'm kidding. You know what I mean, though. We all want that. Everybody wants it, and kids really, really need approval. So do husbands and wives, by the way, for what it's worth. If you haven't been giving your spouse approval lately, I suspect that you should start to find things you really like about them and mention it, okay? Because there was a day when you could have rattled them off every day off the top of your head, but in the course of life, maybe you've lost some of that. And so that's important to teach your family and your children to find things they like about themselves and decide that they are going to be happy. Okay, there's a lot of things that I could be unhappy about today, but those things aren't so important to me. Look around. I am very blessed. I have many things I can be happy about. Uh, I would encourage you to teach your children to be responsible for themselves emotionally. I mean, we all have a down day, okay? And there are people who really set you off. And some of them might be in your family. Who knows? But take responsibility for your own emotions. You know, uh, Other people cannot make you mad. They can do things that you choose to be mad about, but it is your choice whether you're going to be happy or whether you're going to be mad. One reason I'm bringing this up is one of the things that I've noticed when I work with uh, combating sex trafficking is that one of the biggest ways that pimps really go after girls is, hey, baby, I'm going to take care of you. Well, that is a huge red flag to us here that work here at Million Kids, because you have someone that feels that somebody has to take care of them. They're going to be extremely vulnerable to grooming. I honestly think that's one of the things that makes it so hard for foster kids, and why foster kids are the number one target when it comes to sex trafficking, because they haven't had that wonderful foundation. Now, I've seen a lot of resilient foster kids that are very, very smart and sharp. And I've also seen some kids from good homes that are not. But the number one thing that pimps will look for are kids with low self esteem or who want to be taken care of. And they just consider that easy prey. And they will come in there and go, "Hey, baby, I'm here for you. I'm sorry your dad wasn't there for you. I'm sorry your mom's a jerk. I get it, but I will take care of you." I always say when somebody wants to take care of you, it will come at a huge price. Run, baby, run. Stop and begin to find the things you like about yourself and decide that you are valuable. You will often hear me talk about when I go out and do public speaking as Million Kids. We talk about self esteem. Self esteem is a decision you make. So many kids think that self esteem is something that came in the family DNA and their family just didn't get it. So they're tough out of luck. You know, Nothing could be further from the truth. There may be people in your family that have low self esteem, but that doesn't mean you don't, or you do, excuse me, or that you have to have low self esteem. Self esteem is just like happiness and contentment and gratitude. It is a decision you make yourself. Once you decide that you're valuable, it's a gift you give yourself. Nobody can take that away from you. Make that decision every day, several times a day. I am valuable. I may not be perfect. I may be a little chubby. I may, have a wart on my nose or something, whatever my perceived flaw is. I get that. But that does not mean you are not valuable. You see, happiness and contentment, self-worth, self-esteem, they're a choice. And it is a important message for your children. But it's the kind of message that you share in one of those bonding moments, okay? One of those times where you're not screaming at the top of your lungs. And if you're not having those with your children, I recommend that you make time to do them. Start with yourself. Decide you are going to be happy and content. Look around and start to list out everything that you're grateful for. What do you like about your spouse? What do you like about your children? What do you like about your home? What do you like about your possessions? And do you take good care of them and show your children how to treasure them and take care of them, not throw them in a heap on the floor? I really believe that's important. When I see people who don't take care of things, I think they don't see the value of each of those things. And that is true of yourself. If you don't take care of yourself, you are not seeing the value of what you have to give to the rest of your family, to your children, to your work, to your church, to your family, to your community. You see, once you define your values, and that's true with you sitting down with your kids, and your kids may not even understand what values are. What a great bonding time. You see, values are what makes me good. Values are what makes me know who I am. Values are where I get my strength of character. Values are what keeps me from being vulnerable to people who want to take advantage of me. Values will keep me from comparing myself to others, because really what is important to me is what I decide is important to me about who I am and what I want to become. You know, so many young people today blame everybody else but themselves. And I see it. I see it at a very young age. And I understand that's part of childhood. I probably had that perfected against my brother. But at some point, when you really develop character, and I honestly think that that's an important discussion about how to help your child develop character, to do what is right the first time, but also to forgive yourself when you make mistakes and to forgive others. It's very important, I think, that these issues are a part of growing up. And the reason I say that is because this generation of young people are going to be influenced. I was doing a lot of research about Gen Z and the 18 to 34 audiences and how they follow influencers and follow people. I find that interesting because one of the big things online for teenagers today is character AI. And there's some huge number of various characters. I don't know if you've ever been on character AI. Some of them are okay and some of them are not. One of the things you do need to know, there's about 28 million different characters. Some of them are okay, but many of them are created by independent developers using open AI, which means just because your child may be talking to one character online, that if they switch characters, you don't know who is behind the information that's being given to these kids. And I think that that is so important. With artificial intelligence, this generation is going to grow up in a globally connected world where it will be very, very difficult to be able to tell who is influencing you from online, especially if they start very young and they're heavily involved in animation. What is influencing your child? You might even sit with your child as they're on those screens. Those screens are not babysitters. Those screens are giving input to your child's psyche and defining for them what they think. And that is the way this generation is going to be. We're not going to overcome that, I guarantee you. However, what we can do is before our kids' character is shaped by character AI characters, many of which I don't agree with. The number one character when I went on was Sakuna, and his logo was "Bow down before me, you fool." Well, I don't know, but my kid ain't going to be talking to that. Okay. My kid needs to have better thinking than that. And so, one of the things I want you to think about is when you put a child on a device, you are giving them an avenue into your child's brain, your child's self esteem, your child's self image, your child's thought processes. And when I realize that happiness and contentment are a decision I make, I want to be really, really careful about who else puts thought processes into my head, because I don't agree with a lot of the violence that's on there. I don't agree with a lot of this extremist, nihilistic thinking. I don't agree with all the heavy duty sexuality. When I see the number of teenagers that are on OnlyFans, wanting to be porn stars, that were on Pornhub, 9 million videos had to be taken off of Pornhub at one point. They were all teenagers who wanted to be, amateur porn stars and thought they were going to make some money. I look at that and I think, who who allowed these people to develop our kids into porn stars? And they're thinking, oh, mom, I'm just an influencer and I want 1 million followers, and you have to do this risque stuff to have 1 million followers. Well, it is a generation of young people that have allowed all kinds of bots to talk to their children. And it's going to get worse, by the way, before it gets better. I may not get better. And so I know this sounds a bit idealistic, but I really think that as a parent in the digital age, it is up to us, first of all, to teach our children to be in charge of their own emotions, to make healthy decisions about being happy, valuing themselves and others, having respect, having gratitude for what they have, knowing their values and what they stand for, and valuing possessions along with it, and taking on the responsibility for their own happiness and also giving back to the community. But I also think that for a whole generation of kids that are starting at 4, 5, 7, 8 years old, they are going to receive a huge amount of input that you will have no control over. And so you have to kind of come to terms with yourself about what is important to you in child rearing. Now, I'm not going to say every child that goes online is going to result in violence or, acting out and all of that sort of thing. There are some statistics, and we've also seen on the extreme side individuals who are groomed by nihilistic extremists who see the kind of sexuality no adult should ever see, let alone a 12 or 13, 14-year-old. But especially if your child is prepubescent, I hope you'll think that out, because when they go online, they will learn about sex, and not necessarily the kind of loving, giving, caring, respectful sex that two human beings should have. So it's going to happen, and you have to make those decisions. But I also think that it's very important that we sit down in quiet conversations. Let your kids know that you believe in them. You will often hear me say the four most powerful words on earth are "I believe in you." And when you're talking about internet activity, you start there. You're smart. I trust you, or I wouldn't give you this device. I believe in you. Now, I am your parent, so I'm not going away, okay? I am still going to check out your device. But I also know that you're the first generation in all of history that's being allowed to live in a globally connected world. And there are no rule books for this, except you be careful, okay? But there are some rule books about, I wouldn't do this, except I know you have high standards. Let's define those standards together. Parents, I often recommend before your child goes online, or even if they're online, you do a contract, a social media contract. Number one is, I believe in you. I know you're going to do the right thing, but I want your promise that you will never, ever put anything online that will cause harm or embarrassment to you or your family, because it will be on there forever. You are the first generation that lives in a globally connected world, and you cannot get it back. So think twice before you hit send, and especially if it's somebody you have never met. They all look good and they all look hot, but once that photo is out there, you can't get it back. I also think part of the contract would be every app you have, I'm going to have, okay? And you're going to teach me how to use it. I'm not that old and crotchety yet that I can't learn some of this. But I think it's important because you're going to be making decisions about that. And I want to understand what those decisions are all about. Number three, I want you to promise me that you'll never, ever go out and meet up with someone you met online. As Million Kids, I'm going to tell you, those are the worst cases we've ever had. We run Million Kids Missing Kids. You will get flyers, and you might want to do that. Please go to millionkids.org and sign up for those newsletters. They're great, great newsletters. They come every week. We don't charge for them. We don't sell your name, but it's a way for you to see how technology is used in ways that will harm children and how to protect your children. So it's millionkids.org. Sign up for that newsletter. Number four in the contract that you should have between you and your child is whatever it is, that they will trust you enough to come to you. Because, and this is the world of deep fakes. I can't tell you the millions of kids out there that are saying, it's not me, it's not me. Okay, that's my habit, that's not me. And now they want money. And they panic and they start sending money off to somebody they never met. Talk with your child and say, I believe in you. You're a smart kid. And I want to talk about the fact that we expect you and us to be responsible for your happiness and contentment. But also, I hope that you will trust us enough that if you find yourself in trouble, you'll come to us. And I promise I'll do everything I can to not go wacko on you. Okay. I promise to be as brave as I can and as smart as I can, and we can work it out together. But don't do anything stupid because you're afraid to tell us. Please come to us. So, this has been an interesting podcast to me because it isn't anything concrete that I can give you, but I do hope it stimulates your thinking. You know, happiness and contentment are a choice. And there are days it's a hard choice. You're like, I'm not in the mood for this deal. Okay, I get it. I do. But when you find yourself there, look around and say, I'm so grateful. Grateful for my spouse, grateful for my kids, grateful for my home, grateful for my job. Maybe you're not grateful for your job, but you find out those things that you are grateful and you choose to be grateful and happy. And I think that's a conversation that's important with your kids, that they don't need to find approval online with some stranger they've never met. They don't need anybody online to take care of them because they will learn and choose to take care of themselves. Okay, there's a lot of people out there that may be better than me, smarter than me, more talented than me, and whatever. But I am me. And I'm going to define my values and I'm going to do the best I can to be the best person I can be. I'm going to take responsibility for myself. And it's going to start with what I say to myself, because I realize that what I say to myself will define who I am. I hope this podcast has been helpful. I don't propose to be a psychologist by any means. I just am sharing some life experience with you. And I'm doing that because I see kids that make poor decisions online, and I see kids who are trapped into sex trafficking or they're trapped into sending a nude, and then they don't know how to get out of it. But more important, I see kids who become dependent on character AI bots who are on there talking to them every day. I see little kids who are being trained and educated and brought up by screen time without proper balance from an adult who cares about them. And I say, this is an important consideration, and I hope you'll think about it, that what your child is saying to themselves matters, what is being said to them online matters, and what they choose to do to be happy matters. My name is Opal Singleton, OPAL. You can write to me at OPAL, Opal, at millionkids.org. Thank you. I hope you'll share this podcast with others, and I hope you will join us on other podcasts. And if you have it in your heart and you want to, you certainly no pressure, but if you want to support our work at millionkids.org, just go to millionkids.org, hit that donate button. I'll see you again on the next podcast.